This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Hello, welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. Today, we're embarking on a Patron Roundtable discussion of favorite and under-recognized guest performances on The X-Files. I am your host, Marlene Stemme. I'm joined today by a new patron, Chandru Ravindran. Hey, Chandru.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Oh, good. And we also have veteran patron, Michelle Milbauer. Hey, Michelle.
Hi. Glad to be back.
Yeah, good to have you. This is going to be fun. What we're going to do today is go in a round-robin fashion through our own lists of favorite guests, and we're going to just have discussion around those if anyone has anything that they want to contribute, and then comment on what turned out to be a bumper crop of listener feedback. Since this is your first Xcast appearance, Chandru, would you like to go first?
Sure thing. I was initially planning on starting more obscure because that's what I was thinking when I was thinking about this topic, but I decided to go more obvious, and my first one would be Brad Dourif as Luther Lee Boggs in Beyond the Sea. Basically, the first season of The X-Files is pretty hit or miss for me, and early on in that season, it all feels very rough around the edges, and Beyond the Sea is the first time the performances feel like very dynamic and actually like great television. It's not only Luther Lee or Brad Dourif, it's also Gillian Anderson, but Brad Dourif is fantastic. And the two scenes that always stand out for me are obviously the one where Scully freaks out at him and calls him a son of a bitch. And the moment that always gets me is when he seems to be about to let her talk to her father, and then he's sitting there saying, like, Starbuck, and then it's suddenly the utter freak out where he starts yelling, no. I don't ever want to go back to that place ever. It's like the pure fear in his voice, and like you could just feel all the emotion coming out of him. Like if I was watching the show from the beginning, that's like the moment where the show would have been completely had me hooked. And then the very end of that episode, when he's walking down death row to his execution, and he's seeing all his family members' ghosts in the background, and just that moment where he's walking. And then he does that little look where he tries to turn back, but the guards like sort of hold him in place. It's just you really feel for this guy who's pretty much this horrible murderer who killed his entire family. And just the fact that Brad Dourif makes you actually care about him at that moment, it's like the first really memorable performance from the show that I can remember.
I agree with that. And I think that there's a way that he cries quietly throughout the episode without it being boo-hooing or feeling sorry for himself that really makes the entire thing emotional as well, I think.
Yeah, his performance throughout that entire episode is phenomenal, I guess, for a lack of a better word. You really feel every emotion of the character, and it makes you... or it makes me anyway, sort of sympathetic to him, even though he's a horrible person. His performance is stellar.
That's exactly how I, like, at the end when Scully's not there as his witness, I almost am like, Scully, come on, this guy's a nice guy. Why are you not there for him? And I'm like, no, he's pretty terrible. The one other moment that I can think of is when Scully's is lying to him and basically says, you got your deal. And he just quietly looks up, crying, and he goes, thank you, ma'am, thank you. He knows that she's lying, but he's genuinely appreciative that he tried, or that she tried. Everything he does in that episode really resonates with me, and that's why he's my first pick.
I love that scene, too. That's the one you just mentioned when she says, Luther, if you really were psychic, and he says, I don't know, and you lied. There's something in that that's very authentic.
Yep.
Yeah, great choice. Okay, Michelle, what is your first choice?
My first choice is CCH Pounder, who was Lucy Kasdan in Duane Barry. I'm an unabashed CCH Pounder fan. You often hear of actors being that guy, and she is that lady, where she's been in everything, and in my opinion, elevates everything she's in. And her character in this episode is an FBI hostage negotiator, essentially. I think that it would have been interesting to see her character come back in later episodes as a hostage negotiator. There are other episodes where that would fit. One that stands out because it's also in the DC area was Monday, the whole bank heist and the explosion. And it would have been interesting to see her character come back to kind of talk him down. Or,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, so just using her more. I mean, she was an FBI agent, and I mean, I understand, she's a working actress still, and may have had other conflicts, but it just seemed to be a character that could have been utilized more. And I'm a CCH Pounder fan, so I would just like to see her more.
And one thing that would have been a benefit of using her more is that she actually, at the end of that episode, bought into Mulder's theory, like quietly. She didn't really admit it, but would have just had a nice dynamic there, just that she sort of believes him.
Yeah. Mulder having another friend in the FBI, as it were, would have been great. And again, I'm not sure that it counts as an underrated because she did get nominated for an Emmy for that performance. Deserved, in my opinion. Yeah, she did.
She did.
Maybe not underrated per se, but underused, perhaps.
It's definitely what could have been a smaller performance made into something that had real presence because of the way that she plays the part, I think.
And she does appear in several episodes of Millennium. She did continue with the 1013 team, I suppose. But again, I like her in general. So seeing her more often would definitely not have hurt my feelings.
Okay.
She's definitely awesome for forcing Krychek to get her a coffee. So.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's a classic moment. Well, I did not go to such quality as both of you for my first ones, not to denigrate my first people, but my first one is the retired sheriff in Squeeze. And this is purely for entertainment potential. The actor is Henry Beckman. He plays Detective Frank Briggs. And he's the fellow that Mulder and Scully visit in the retirement home. And he says he's been waiting for them for years. And there's something earnest about what he's telling them, but there's this air of melodrama to it as well that I think makes it inadvertently funny. Like, if you do the math, he has to be at least in his 90s to have been a sheriff in those early years when he's talking about the first Powhatan Mill murders. And he speaks with such drama about the way everything happened. And they're listening so intently, but I just cannot help but chuckle whenever he is on the screen. So that's my first one, purely for the campy comedy of season 1 that I enjoy.
I think that's a great choice. And anything from those early episodes, I mean, Squeeze and Tombs are iconic episodes. And for his performance definitely does stand out in that he's haunted by the things that he experienced, but to a degree, as you said, Marlene, melodramatic, adds some levity to the episode, which I also enjoy.
And whenever I watch this scene, I'm always torn, like, because he's the emotional center of that, that the entire Tomb storyline, just having the fact that he never was able to catch him. But it's that melodrama that does make it super enjoyable. I mean, it was only 5 murders. It should not be compared to the Holocaust, but that's what
it's the atrocities in Bosnia and Holocaust.
That's what he's all about, and it is enjoyable. And he's clairvoyant in Tombs when he just spots the skeleton right under the concrete without any actual science or anything. So
I really do enjoy that discussion of intuition and knowing things in Tombs. That I think had a little more weight. So I'd give him a vote in both episodes actually. So that's my number one, my first choice. Chandru, back to you.
All right. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and pick 2 actors from one episode. Okay. So I'm an unabashed Aubrey fan.
Yay.
Awesome.
I love it so much.
And I don't know if those polls I do on the Facebook group, I was upset when it got voted off so early. I'm going to go with Terry O'Quinn and Deborah Strang as Brian Tillman and BJ Morrow. And the reason I picked them is it's not even necessarily the performances themselves. It's just these 2 characters are one-off characters that we're not going to see again, but they completely inhibit their characters, like right from the teaser where they're talking about BJ's pregnancy and, it's just like a 2-minute scene in his office where she lets him know she's pregnant and he's frustrated, but they sell so much in that little scene and you immediately are, or at least I'm immediately invested in what's going on with these side characters, so that when the paranormal stuff happens and BJ basically starts falling apart and Tillman is sort of reacting, like I'm there with them. Like, Mulder and Scully are in that episode a good amount, but I don't think that episode would have been as successful without me caring about those 2 characters. And I just feel like the relationship feels very real.
I think it's a great point because I notice when I watch it, and I often rewatch Aubrey, it's one of my favorites as well, but I do pay attention to what's happening between them, and I don't need to pay attention to get more knowledge or information from it, but it's just that they are so compelling, and there's that air of anxiety, and Mulder and, Scully at least, is picking up on that relationship between them, so she's picking up on something, and the performances, I think, go along with the characters are supposed to be feeling, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me too.
Yeah, I will admit that I haven't rewatched that episode in quite some time, but now next time I do, I will pay closer attention to those two characters.
Michelle, what's your second one?
My second pick is also one I'm not sure if can be considered underrated, but since I attended X-Fest 2, I've become a bit of a Karen Konoval stalker. And she is phenomenal, which I always knew. Getting to speak to her in person was still, I'm still on cloud nine from that 2 weeks later. Watching her, she was kind enough during her screening of Plus One at X-Fest 2 to do a Q&A, not really a Q&A, but I guess an explanation of her process to get into those characters, Judy and Chucky, ahead of time, because a lot of folks had to leave early to get flights and whatnot. And just sitting there and watching her bounce back and forth between Judy, Chucky, and herself at the drop of a hat was something to behold. So everything she's ever done ever, to me, is a phenomenal performance, and all of her characters on the X-Files have been great. So here I am, unabashed Karen Konoval stalker of sorts, but I think she's just amazing.
She's definitely one of my favorites. I mean, I didn't list her, I guess, because she does seem too luminary or something. I don't know. And maybe it's because in my mind, I'm like, she's not even just a guest actor. Isn't she the head of the show or something? Which is, silly. But I think I was so looking forward to seeing her at X-Fest that I kind of, I put her at the top of my mind as well,
Yeah, she's a whole other level, I guess, but I couldn't go through this list without mentioning her because, again, stalker.
I think she puts everything into the performance, like everything that's appropriate for that character, she gives it.
I haven't seen, I only saw Plus One once. Like, I haven't rewatched season 10 or 11, or 9, actually. But she plays the astrology expert in Syzygy, however you pronounce that, right?
Oh, no, she was the psychic in Clyde Bruckman.
Clyde Bruckman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In the teaser in Clyde Bruckman's final
that's her.
Pose.
All right.
Yeah.
And then is she also the mother in Home?
She sure is.
All right. Okay.
There's a whole other story regarding I'm Hungry, which is just a whole other level.
Yeah, she's awesome in that. I can't speak as much about Plus One, but yeah, she's terrifying. Terrifying in Home and pretty unsettling.
Yeah. And even if she's not underrepresented or underdiscussed, she probably needs to be mentioned on every podcast. So
I'm all for that.
Well, I'm going to follow in the pattern of my first choice with my second choice, which is also kind of a sillier one and also a sheriff, which is Sheriff Lance Hint in Quagmire, played by Chris Ellis. It's just his line delivery and his rapport with Mulder and Scully, and it says Agent Mulder, and he's kind of trying to get his name right. Just little things like that make him very entertaining as this small town.
He's not sure we're dealing with an aquatic menace.
Right, exactly. That's probably my favorite line in X-Files, or one of them. And he really wants to solve the case, but he's clearly out of his depth. And just everything about his performance is it's entertaining and perfect for that episode, I think. He's my second one. Sarah Blair will back me up on this, I'm sure.
A close second performance, as it were, from that episode is the Show Us Your Bobber's Hat, which Sarah could speak at length about.
I just listened to the Quagmire episode with Sarah and Carl, and I forget who the other one was. So now I can relate to how much she's obsessed with it. But yeah, the side characters in that episode in general are just great. Show Us Your Bobber's guy, Show Us Your Bobber's hat, Sheriff, and Ansel, I think his name is.
Yeah,
they all work together so well in that episode, just sort of campy and schlocky, but just enjoyable.
And then you have the serious scientist, Dr. Faraday, as well, that kind of balances it out. Yeah. My nod to Quagmire. Chandru, do you want to go with your third one?
All right, so I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this last name, but Susan Blomert as Mrs. Paddock in Dehan de Burlesque. Whenever I watch the episode, I almost take her for granted because there's so much craziness going on in that episode. You got the locker room scene at the end. You've got the awesome teaser. You got the snake scene. But she nails so many different aspects of her character. She's basically pretending to be a substitute teacher, and she plays sympathetic, supportive teacher to a T. She basically seems like every substitute teacher that I liked back when I went to school. So she definitely plays that well. Then when she's having the kids do the dissections and she's basically running through the rules for the dissection and the grades, she sounds like every teacher that had a stick up their butt that I've had. So she plays that really well. And then when she's evil, she's got that over-the-top evil with that grunting sound she's making as she's doing whatever her witchcraft or her satanic ritual is. And there's that moment when Mulder and Scully find her on the ground and she's still playing like she's an innocent victim, and she's saying, I think they may have killed that boy. And then they go running off and her face just goes from scared victim to like this wicked grin on her face. It's just, she is awesome. And I don't think I hear her talked about that much, so that's why she is my number 3.
She also was at X-Fest as well. And really cool.
Yeah, I need to really go there.
I know. Yeah, they have some fantastic choices this year. But there's the 2 parts while you were talking that I was thinking about as well, is when she tells Scully, she's like, Agent Scully, I'm old-fashioned. I'm not something about like kids today, about like not used to the things that they do, or something like that she says. That, and then in the scene when she's passing out the pigs and talking about dissection, there's something about the way she just like throws the pig, or isn't she throw a pig in the snake tank?
Yep.
There's something about that that's so cavalier that it just adds this little element of evil to it. And she did that really well. So.
There's an underlying creepiness to her entire performance, which really, really fits so well with the episode.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Michelle, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is from a season 9 episode, Improbable, and it's Burt Reynolds. He played God, so, I mean, come on. I think it's really a somewhat ignored episode because it was season 9, and I think at that point, critics were sort of, that show still exists, and even a lot of fans had abandoned ship by that point.
I had, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was through in its entirety. I started at the beginning, and I finished at the end of season 9 at the time, and of course, now 10 and 11. I just remember at the time that episode was so weird and irreverent and funny and also heartfelt. And I think his performance really cemented that heartfelt nature of the episode. To me, his performance just knocked it out of the park. I mean, how weird is it? Cha-cha and checkers in a parking garage? Hey, why not? I have to imagine recording that or filming that episode was a lot of fun. And so his performance in that episode stands out. Again, I'm not sure if it could be considered underrated, but the fact that it was season 9 and I don't know how many people even actually saw it, it stands out for me. In a sea of mediocrity that I think season 9 was, that was a standout.
I love Improbable, and I'm not a season 9 fan at all either, but I love that episode. I watched that with and without there's a commentary track that Chris Carter does that's really good, and he talks a little bit about working with Burt Reynolds and filming those scenes. I think anyone that is playing God is going to be probably underrated, so it's fitting.
Unfortunately, I don't have much to contribute. I did watch season 9 the first time it aired, but I haven't gone back and watched it again. But I am doing a rewatch right now. I'm in the middle of season 3, and I should be on 9 eventually. So I will make sure I let you guys know what I think about it when I get there.
Okay. So my third is going to be a little bit similar to Chandru's third one, and that is Michael Childers playing Reverend Enoch O'Connor, the snake handling preacher in Signs and Wonders.
Yep.
I tend to think that episode is a little bit underrated in some ways anyway, and I think his performance is stellar. He's all in, compelling. He's emotionally complex because he's a very unappealing character, and yet at the same time there's some wisdom that he has, throughout and at the end, even though it's not in ways that anyone wants to hear, and some of it is downright offensive at times and so forth, but he just plays it in this very, very authentic way. And there's something about his physicality, from his facial expressions to the way he moves, that really looks like someone in that type of church would behave. So I thought his performance was probably one of the standout ones in my mind of the whole show, in terms of a niche community that is, at least in that one person, that one character, that is accurately represented.
So I don't have much specifically about him, but I do know when I watched season 7 again like 3 years ago, but it basically hit home for me how different of a viewer of the X-Files I am from my teenage years till now. Because when I watched that episode the first time, I didn't understand any of the nuance to like his performance or anything. I just thought, he's really bad. He's a really bad guy. When I watched it again a few years ago, it was way more layered than I remembered. It was a great performance. Yeah. I haven't seen the episode in years though.
But it's like the way he says, like when he's saying hallelujah and being exuberant, that seems really real. It doesn't seem like someone that's putting on a show or that's a charlatan or anything of that sort. So I think that would be really difficult to give that level of performance.
It belays almost a familiarity with the subject matter that he may or may not have, but I guess that it really highlights his ability as an actor. And also when you are portraying somebody that's inherently kind of unlikable, but also dynamic and charismatic, and as Chandru said, multi-layered. It's also an excellent performance.
Chandru, what's your fourth?
All right, so when we talk about DPO, everyone talks about Giovanni Ribisi, but I'm going to mention Jack Black because I'm not a Jack Black fan. I've seen him in a bunch of things, but his style is not really my style. But his performance in DPO, especially his death scene, I think just is really, really, really underrated. He plays like the stoner friend really well. You could tell he really cares about his friend while still being basically a slacker. But his death scene, you can just sense the betrayal he's feeling. Maybe not betrayal, but the fear that Darren thinks that he's betrayed him. And he just sells that as he's basically crying for his life as he's running out of the arcade. And direction from Kim Manners in that scene, the music that's playing, and his performance, they all work really well together. That episode's sort of middling for me, but I feel like that scene elevates things, and that's thanks to his performance.
I agree, and I think that there is like a tension that he plays in being the best friend of Giovanni Ribisi, but then also being afraid of him at the same time. And it's like sometimes it's more one, and sometimes it's more the other. And he's trying to kind of guide him in some ways. We had a comment, I think, in response to one of your comments online. And the comment was from Luke Winch, that said that when Jack Black is not in full Jack Black mode, he actually pulls off really decent performances, and says that his death scene was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's exactly how that feels.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be as over the top in his performance here as a lot of what he has done since. As far as underrated performances, I agree.
Michelle, what's your fourth one?
My fourth one, again, is kind of one that I'm not sure counts, but maybe I'm going to say Darren Morgan. Now, we all know him as a writer, but he was in 2 episodes. He was the Fluke Man, which is equal part fascinating and disgusting, and you don't know he's under there. And also, of course, Eddie Van Blunt in Small Potatoes. Now, I've gone on record in the past as saying that I'm a shipper. I own it. I am still full in as a shipper, but I may have to turn in my shipper card a little bit because Small Potatoes isn't a favorite episode of mine. But I think Darren's performance in that episode elevates it for me because he's just such a lovable loser in that episode. Yeah. He's tired of being Small Potatoes. He wants to be a big deal, and his shape-shifting ability allows him to do that, at least for a while. So I think his performance there is just outstanding. And I mean, the Fluke Man, the host is a iconic episode, as is Small Potatoes, really. So he was 2 iconic characters and, of course, wrote multiple iconic episodes. So it's hard to say that I would have liked to have seen him do more acting because I'm not willing to give up the episodes that he wrote in favor of having him as an on-screen actor. But the performances he gave, in my opinion, are just great, fun. Well, I mean, maybe the host isn't so much fun, but just uniquely memorable performances. And I think he's great.
There's something in that last conversation that he has with Mulder and Small Potatoes that I think is really good. Just even the verbal performance when he's telling him that he was born a loser, but you're one by choice. And some of the things that he's saying and the way he's saying them are really, he does a really good job with that too. That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of him, but I think that works.
Yeah, he almost made my list, but he's got this real aw shucks vibe, like so that scene at the end that you were talking about, where he's giving Mulder like pretty worldly advice, but it's coming from the heart of a guy who feels like he's got nothing in life. And like there's an earlier scene too where Scully, when he's basically saying, just because I was born with a tail, no woman would want me. his voice kind of cracks at that moment.
It does.
And it's endearing. I mean, his character is doing pretty awful things, and that episode hasn't aged particularly well. But Darren Morgan's performance is still great. And Small Potatoes has a soft spot for me because it was the 4th episode I ever saw, and that was the first time I realized, wait, Mulder and Scully might be a romantic couple. And then I became like a pseudo shipper for a while. The genesis of parts of my fandom came from that episode. So,
okay, my 4th is Roy Thins. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm never sure. Roy Thins as Jeremiah Smith, and specifically in Talitha Kumi. I think he's good in all of the episodes. He's good in Here and Volk. I like him a lot, actually, and this is not happening, but it's particularly in Talitha Kumi that he has this, it's almost an otherworldly but of this world presence. He's very serene and confident, and I think that's unusual, and I think it introduces the healing scene in the fast food restaurant in an interesting way for the X-Files. It kind of gives it this, it's a spiritual quality, I guess, but I don't know how to explain it, but it's something to do with his person and his character, how he does that. And then just throughout that whole episode, he's willing to go with them when he's called away from the Social Security Administration, and the scenes with the cigarette smoking man in the Grand Inquisitor sequences are just, they're so composed, but they're just very genuine. And I think that was a unique performance that he gave in that. And I find him very, very watchable in a different way than what we've seen from other people on the show. So he's one of my top ones.
Yeah, his performance is almost haunting, especially in that Inquisitor scene. And William B. Davis's reaction to him kind of reflects that. He's sort of the mirror of the viewers in that scene, I think, in that he's really troubled with having to view and to hear about his past transgressions. And Jeremiah Smith is again, a haunting performance, I think, in all of his episodes, but those beginning, his introduction, I think especially so.
I think haunting is a great way to explain it, but also there's like this hopefulness also with him, because I mean, up till then, the conspiracy and all the myth arc had all been dark and without any light. It's all about colonization, and it's about Scully being abducted and the test being done on her. But he's this friendly, benevolent alien, basically. I mean, the very first scene, he's healing this guy who tried to kill 4 or 5 people in that fast food restaurant. He's just got this way he carries himself that is great in Talitha Kumi. I do not like him in Harrenbook, though, because I feel like Chris Carter made him into, okay, we need to stop the myth arc on his track, so he's going to like put up roadblocks to everything Mulder's trying to solve. But he is fantastic in the episode before that.
The thing that I don't like in Harrenbook is that I thought in Talitha Kumi, he was sort of this, again, like this serene character that was wise and so forth and had the spiritual quality, but he was a character that could not be moved. And then in Harrenbook, he seems more afraid or more used as an explanatory tool, those sorts of things, you know. Yeah. And I just didn't think that it just wasn't as strong, I don't think, a characterization as it was in Talitha Kumi. I thought he got a little bit of that back, actually, of the sort of Talitha Kumi sense of him, and This Is Not Happening, but I still think This Is Not Happening is sort of is unique for having him in it. I think we're on 5, Chandru.
I'm going to go with Tracy Ellis as Lucy Householder in Oubliette or Oubliette. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'll go with the French version. Oubliette. Okay. She is great because she's basically this character that's helping Mulder find this girl who's been kidnapped, and she's the way that they're going to save this girl from being murdered by, I guess the guy's name is Carl Wade. What I like about her performance and the writing of her character is that she doesn't come off as obviously sympathetic. She is a sympathetic character, but like a lot of people in real life, probably she's hardened herself to the point where she doesn't want to help, that she's kind of dug in. She's rigidly resisting helping out Amy Jacobs. And I think Tracy Ellis plays that really well. She plays it really conflicted and really struggling to get her life back on track. You could just sort of get a sense of that. And then when I think the scene where she's running, when Amy Jacobs escapes and then the camera's cutting back and forth between her and Lucy running and Mulder chasing her, and then she collapses, she says, "What is happening to me?" You could just sort of sense the walls crumbling for her. I think she is just a really great character. I love the character flaws and her motivations, and you know, her death scene, like not the death itself, but well, her death is tragic too, but Mulder's reaction to it is just gives me chills. Probably brings a tear to my eye every time I watch it, and you know, it's due to her performance.
I think too, because she's not tremendously likable, I guess, even though she's a good person or a good character, and she's not soft. But I think that allows Mulder to be, like, Mulder's softness to her sort of shows more in him, and then it makes that scene when she dies even more affecting because he's not crying over somebody that was this like sweet person that was trying to help or anything like that. He really is having empathy for her. So that completely comes from her.
I think for her as a human being, which is what I think she made that character in 35 minutes.
And she's also shout out to her for being in Audrey Polly as well. It's a season 9 one. I don't see that often, but I remember that I liked it. I liked that aspect of the episode when she was the nurse in the hospital. I need to go back and watch that because there were a lot of things like that I liked. And she said something about basically like building this hospital in her mind is what I remember, what I took from it. And then she said something about and these patients started to show up. And there was a little something chilling about it, even though it was just this sort of imaginary sequence. But I remember that she did a good job with that one as well. Michelle, what's your 5th one?
Okay, my 5th one is a revisit to an episode I mentioned earlier, which was Monday, and Carrie Hamilton played. Oh, sorry. She played Pam, the bank robber's girlfriend. It's kind of a Groundhog Day episode where we just keep reliving the same day over and over and over again. And while there's the lightness of poor Mulder's waterbed sprung a leak and he needs to go to the bank to deposit his paycheck and just everything that's going wrong for Mulder, which is sort of meaningless in the scheme of things. And we get Pam's point of view, where each time we Groundhog Day ourselves back to this Monday starting over, you can feel her desperation to have this loop end. And I think for me, great performances are defined by you lose the actor in it and you can believe that they're feeling everything that they're putting out there. And as I said, I mean, her desperation is almost palpable in this episode. And when she says at the end, when the loop is finally broken and Bernard shoots her because she steps in front of Mulder, this never happened before. Her delivery is heartbreaking. And it was equally heartbreaking a few years later to hear that she had passed, because I think she was just a great actress. And you often think of her in relation to her mother, who is just the incomparable Carol Burnett, and how over-the-top hilarious she is. And this performance being the antithesis of what her mother is known for, just deeply serious, but she was just phenomenal in my opinion. So that is my 5th choice.
She's the reason that Monday is one of my favorite episodes from the 6th season, because I think you mentioned it, Michelle, that the Mulder stuff is kind of light. Sure, the bank robbery stuff by itself is, dark because Mulder and Scully are dying over and over. But the episode is not super emotionally grounded except from Carrie Hamilton. She basically holds the episode together and makes everything matter. And it is heartbreaking at the end. But it's also like a sense of relief when you see that she's free. I think she plays that really well.
I think, too, that she also ramped up the anxiety with each iteration. Like, you can kind of, I thought, sense that, like, time is going by in a way, even though it's repeating, like, she's having a sense of this happening again and again. Because every time she's shaking a little bit more or just seems more nervous, and she says that we've done this time after time. So she really plays that like someone who's gone through a lot.
And I forgot this moment, but, like, the moment when, I think the last one where she's sitting in the car and Mulder finally sort of recognizes her and says, do I know you? And she goes, do you?
Do you? Yeah.
She's just given up. And it's so sad because she's just like, there's no way out of this. It's a great performance.
Well, my 5th is Veronica Cartwright as Cassandra Spender in all of her episodes, but particularly in Patient X. It's interesting because following off of Carrie Hamilton, I would say that both of those actresses are people that were able to play those characters with a lot of empathy for the character and the plight of the character and what they've been put through. Because I think that character of Cassandra Spender could have seemed only histrionic or only crazy or something if somebody had played her that didn't really have some sort of affinity for her emotional experience. And I just thought like that the blend of exuberance and excitement that she has with immediately changing to fright sometimes was really compelling. And both of those people, so I'm kind of like putting them together now, both of those people are characters that pull you in, that you can watch their scenes and be very, very invested in their stories, even without Mulder and Scully around or without, the main storyline going on. And there's just something about her and the way she plays that character that to me like elevates both of the like Patient X and the Red and the Black, even though she's only at the beginning of the Red and the Black. But it makes those episodes more important because it has to do with the life that she's bringing to it.
I am always of the opinion that Patient X and The Red and the Black are underrated episodes. Yeah. So I agree wholeheartedly that her performances in both of those episodes lend heartily to making those episodes, in my opinion, great.
I completely agree with that because those are two of my favorite Myth-Arc episodes. And I think in that two-parter, Patient X and Red and the Black, she's much more hopeful throughout. And then One Father, Two Sons, the part that I always remember is when she's basically screaming in anguish, and then the cigarette smoking man walks in, and then she says, like, and here's the biggest bastard of them all, or something like that. It's like all the hopefulness is kind of gone at that point for her. It's just like a good transition.
Chandru, what is your sixth one?
This one is going back to season 1. So Jason, I think his name is Beghe, as Larry Moore in Darkness Falls. I think he's the the forest ranger who goes up with Mulder and Scully and Steve Humphries guy up to investigate. He basically plays a straight man because Steve Humphries is like the loudmouth, big business type guy who's like, we need to cut down all these trees. The episode's pretty heavy-handed with its writings. You got the eco-terrorists, they're doing their thing. And you've got the straight man who's Larry Moore, and could be a very thankless performance, but he adds a couple layers in there. Like, he's not just on the side of Steve Humphries there. Once Mulder and Scully start discovering that, hey, something might be going on here. Some of these old growth trees have been cut down. He shows he's got his own, he's got his own thoughts, he's got his own motivations, where he's telling Steve Humphries basically going to investigate this, and we're not going to just like skip steps to do what you want. He's got these little layers to him throughout the episode. When he challenges Mulder, when Mulder lets Titus Welliver's character steal the gas and run off to his camp, his reaction to Mulder, Spinny, there we go. When he's pissed at Mulder, but he doesn't play it like extravagantly angry. He plays it very quietly, just like, you let him go with our last can of gas, and he's just quietly pissed off, but he plays it really subtly and really well. And I actually wish at the end of that episode, the camera sort of focused when Mulder, Scully, and him all get, I guess, cocooned, and focus at the end is on Mulder and Scully. You barely get a glimpse of Larry there, and I wish there was either like one line of dialogue for him or just one camera shot, because I feel like his character got underserved at the end.
I can see that. He's kind of left behind in a way at that last part, and he doesn't give the extravagant performance, but it's interesting hearing you talk about it, because I never really thought about it consciously, but you're right. I mean, he's sort of like has an essential place in the episode, but isn't one of the extreme people.
To me, it'd be easy for him to just be forgotten, but he does enough that I always remember him when I'm watching. And it helps that I think the actor is the one who got David Duchovny into acting, so
I think so.
Definitely a plus.
Yeah, he's definitely an understated performance in an enjoyable but really kind of over-the-top episode. So yeah, his performance also stands out to me. I agree with everything you said.
He reminds me, this is an aside, but he reminds me a little bit of the cop in Ex-Cops that's just trying to do a good job, that is talking to Mulder about, what this is going to mean for his reputation and so forth. And he's really just trying to put things together and do the best job.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's like basically the guy who's gotten himself into a paranormal case, but is just doing his thing, not getting too high, not getting too low. There's something to appreciate about that.
Okay, Michelle, we're on number 6.
My number 6 is R. Lee Ermey he was the Reverend Patrick Finley in Revelations. And Revelations isn't a favorite episode of mine, but I think his performance was really outstanding in that we're so used to seeing him as the loud drill instructor from Apocalypse Now or from Full Metal Jacket, just loud and in your face and over the top and army. So his performance here, to see him, the direct antithesis of that was, pun very much intended, a revelation. I think everything about, he wasn't in it long, but the scenes that he was in, I just really enjoyed his performance.
He definitely has a presence. I can, while you're talking, I can see him going through the sermon and the creepy, all of this stuff. Didn't he have the blood tubes under his shirt? And just the way he does all of that.
That episode's not a favorite of mine, but I almost feel like that teaser and that episode might have been better if the teaser ended with him actually having stigmata, because he's got so much energy and power in that performance that right in the next scene he's revealed as a hoax and the real plot kicks off. But I almost feel like the episode might have been better if they'd gone down that route, because he is really good in that moment.
Yeah, there's a lot, I think, about that episode that could have made it better, but the faults that exist in that episode are not due to his performance, in my opinion. He stands out.
Okay, so my sixth is David Manis as Holman Hart in The Rain King. When I saw that episode, I was entertained. It was, kind of silly and frivolous, but it's humorous. It's not necessarily the type of thing that I expected from the X-Files, even by that point, but I enjoyed watching it. And I thought of all of the people in there, many of whom were like very engaging. He's another one that's kind of like not the over-the-top character. Like you have Daryl Moots, that's the Rain King, that's over the top. And then you have Sheila, Victoria Jackson's character, that's over the top. And Mulder and Scully do a good job of being sort of like the responding people and the straight people in the episode. But that leaves Holman Hart, who's kind of the heart of it, and no pun intended there. And he's just this vulnerable character that has really strong feelings. So, of course, to take that and then make it his feelings that are affecting the weather in the end is kind of a fun twist. But I just thought he gave a really sensitive performance, but he just conveys small emotions or like conveys small parts of emotion really well. And you just feel for him, or I do, throughout the episode and the things that he's trying to handle. His performance has always stood out to me in the midst of like a comedy,
I think he's another example of kind of the lovable loser, and you glom onto him because you kind of feel bad for him throughout the whole episode. He's sort of the doormat. He just sort of walks all over him, and he's just a sweet guy.
Yeah. But then he's like, not by the end. He's not the doormat by the end,
Definitely not.
No, I'm not that big of a fan of the episode because of those other over-the-top characters, which I think was intentional to have like the juxtaposition. But he is what makes me enjoy that episode. He's like Eddie Van Blunt on steroids because he's just like this. He's not. I wouldn't say he's pathetic, but he seems like a guy who who's just very in his head, doesn't think he's worth much, and it's a very sympathetic performance.
And even at the end, and these are not necessarily most things like scenes that I particularly enjoy, like romantic comedy types of things like this, but when he tells Victoria Jackson's character that he loves her, there's just something in his voice, like a quaking to it. That's, again, it's not over the top, but there's just such vulnerability, even though he's like putting himself out there. And then when she doesn't take it the right way, he has this look on his face of understanding, but sorrow at the same time. And I just thought it was a very nuanced performance for a screwball episode.
It's like it's like the look of a guy who's like relieved that she misinterpreted it so he doesn't have to be rejected. He plays it really well.
I don't know. Yeah. But there's something that's more complex, I think, that he brings to the episode. So he's my sixth. Chandru for number 7.
All right, so Carrie Hamilton was so I'll go to my backup. So this is a complete cheat because this is from Ice, but I couldn't pick one, so I picked all 4. Xander Berkeley as Hodge, Felicity Huffman as De Silva, even though she's got her issues going on now, but Steve Heitner as Murphy and Jeff Kober as Bear. What I like about the 4 of them is they do probably hit some of the cliches, you expect in an episode or even a movie like this. But I feel like they all bring something to their characters it makes you sympathize with each of them, makes you care for each of them, even when they're being jackasses like Hodges throughout the episode. What I like about Xander Berkeley's performance is he's coming off as abrasive towards Scully in particular, but it's not because he's a bad guy. It's just because it's a bad situation and he might just be an asshole. He might just not be he might just not be getting along with that happens in real life. And I think I like the character dynamics in that episode. Hodge and De Silva have their own little relationship that's not actually explicitly defined. It's just, you get undercurrents of it. So that's good to have. You got Murphy, he's played by Steve Heitner. He gives that character a couple of quirks. And Jeff Kober is Bear, he's like the macho guy, the pilot. But as soon as they find the black nodules, he's freaking out, but he's trying to play it cool because he doesn't want everyone to realize it. I think they all play off each other really well, and I think that makes that episode work, along with the awesome Mulder and Scully stuff.
Ice is the first episode I ever saw, and it's what got me hooked on the show. So I definitely have a soft spot for Ice and all the performances in it. So I couldn't even consider mounting an argument against any of those characters.
Do they call it a bottle episode when, I'm not exactly sure what that means, like when the characters are sort of sequestered away in an isolated location with a small cast of it. That's my favorite thing. I love love stories like that.
You can almost feel the anxiety of it.
Yeah, and it's almost like a play in a way, or it can be. So I really like that episode. And I actually went through, it was a sort of a rewatch review with a friend years ago. And so we really analyzed the episodes and watched them several times and so forth. And I think there's a lot, we didn't get, I think got through the first season at that point. But with Ice, I think there's so much excitement and so much interesting character development between Mulder and Scully that's really great for the series going on, that you don't necessarily talk about the side characters too much, but they're not stock characters. I think what you talked about is really important, that they have this dynamic among them that sort of, I think some of it also illustrates differences between Mulder and Scully, because at that point in the show, I think a lot of the characters that were the side characters were also illustrating things about Mulder and Scully, but they also just had those relationships on their own and their own personalities. And I love that point about Hodge being, maybe he's just an asshole. Like, he's not a bad guy. That's just how he treats people when he's under stress or something like that. Yeah. So that is a whole undercurrent of the episode that I think isn't really discussed a lot. So thank you. So number 7, Michelle.
My number 7 pick may be kind of an unexpected pick from Jose Chung's From Outer Space, because, Charles Nelson Riley, of course, and just Jesse Ventura as one of the Men in Black. But my pick is the second Men in Black, Alex Trebek. What can I say? I love Alex Trebek too. This is just me fangirling over actors and personalities that I'm a fan of in general. But he just has that flat affect and deadpan delivery that every time he's on, it just makes me laugh. He says, "You're feeling very sleepy, very relaxed." And my thought was, nope, I'm feeling like I need to watch that episode again, because he's Alex Trebek, and yet he's a Man in Black. And as crazy as that sounds, it works. And I just love him, love his performance, love that episode. So I'll just be a fangirl. Alex Trebek.
Now, I get the sense, too, that he must have really enjoyed that. Like, I can imagine him sort of smiling to himself after saying his few lines. Yeah, that was perfect. And I don't believe that it was intended first to be him, but it did really work out really well.
Well, so when I first watched that episode, I didn't know who Jesse Ventura was, but I did know who Alex Trebek was. So after watching it, I was like, oh, let me go look up who the other guy was and figure it, because if they had Alex Trebek, the other guy might be famous. So he did help me with that. But he was great. And I don't think they probably did not have Alex Trebek walking around for all the shots where they had, where he's hidden in shadows. But I do like the little look where Blaine Faulkner, when he looks over at when Alex Trebek's character grabs him by the shoulder and he looks at him and he gets this goofy grin on his face just looking at him. I imagine that would be my look if Alex Trebek grabbed me by the shoulder and spun me around to look at him as they're ransacking my house. I can really relate to that.
That's awesome. Okay, so my, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7th one is, her name is Jonelle Kennedy, and she plays Dr. Amina Ngave in The Sixth Extinction. So she's the doctor that Scully works with when she's in Africa and they're deciphering the spaceship and so forth. And I just thought that she was a little bit at the beginning skeptical. So you see that she's has like a sense of that same attitude that Scully has. And I thought they worked really well together. I thought that she was a good scientific partner for Scully and having another interesting woman to work with. And I like the way that even at the end when they're leading her, like the police are there and they're leading her off the beach, she still sort of had her strength about her. And I just really enjoyed her performance in that episode, even though she was, never to be heard from again. I think she's someone that could have been, as in the early years, somebody that Scully consulted, another academic person that Scully consulted.
That's another series of episodes that, in my opinion, are underrated. I really enjoy the Biogenesis trilogy. I know they're kind of overwrought and heavy-handed, but there's just something about them that I find compelling and I enjoy watching. And she is definitely a good reason for that.
Mm-hmm. I do like how the episode ends with her, and I think it would have been nice to see her again, because I don't remember her that well, but I do remember liking her character, and I don't remember liking that episode, so that says something.
Right.
So,
see, I liked the episode, but I especially liked her character and her characterization. And when she talks about the African internet, and she's somebody that's an academic and is obviously a scholar in her field, but at the same time, she understands the way that has to happen in different cultures and so forth. And she just conveys all of that really well. And I like the way that she and Scully work together and then start to kind of think together and have similar ideas. She elevates the episode. Number 8, Chandru.
All right. This is an obvious one, but I couldn't quite separate this character from the episode, and Tony's going to love it, but Robert Wisdom as Pusher. He is amazing. He's so cocky and arrogant. You could just see this, basically how Scully describes him, this little man who wants to be big. And you could just see like this guy who feels like he's the victim in everything, but who's now got this entitled sense of power over everything. Just his sheer arrogance and evilness when he kills, I forget what the cop's name is, who he burns who he has him light himself on fire. His tone of voice, his delivery, he's just not a good guy. And I think his best part of the performance, aside from the Russian roulette scene at the end, but when he's talking Frank first into having a heart attack, it's such a conversation he's having with him on the phone. I can't remember all the specific lines, but he's just tossing things in there, like something about...
You shake on that salt like a maraca.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
Sounds jovial, but he knows what he's doing. It's so malicious, and he's just not a pleasant guy, and he plays it amazingly. And again, he was my backup because I can't separate him from the episode, which is in my top probably 5 of the entire show, but he's awesome.
And Tony on Facebook, our very own Tony Black, says, and of course we probably could predict this because Pusher is his favorite episode of all time. He says the same thing. He says, it's all about Robert Wisdom for me as Robert Patrick Modell. He brilliantly captures the ordinariness of the everyman balanced alongside a cheery level of psychopathy. He makes it look easy. That whole scene where he talks Frank Burst to death is magnificently chilling. Haven't you heard, Mulder? They all kill themselves. So that's Tony's.
That's a great line.
Yeah. Michelle, do you have your 8th one?
My 8th is a twofer.
Okay.
It is Eve 9 and 10, or Cindy and Tina, played by Erica and Sabrina. I'm going to butcher their last name. Crevens. Those girls were creepy. Just creepy. I mean, when we just knew. Ugh. Great actresses. I didn't cyber stalk them, so I'm not sure what their acting careers brought after that, but they were very effective and affecting in that episode. Just creepy, psychotic little kids. And I just think Eve is a great episode, and the two of them just elevated that creepy, crazy performance.
Yeah, I think that was a good example of children's performances on the X-Files, and a good, creepy early episode as well.
There's a couple things I like about their character. There's that scene, I forget which one, Cindy or Tina, but when the first girl is like leading Mulder on this wild goose chase of a conversation where she's basically talking about red lightning and Mulder's lapping it up. Like, yeah, this is everything I wanted to hear. Red lightning, like people from the sky, men from the sky. And she's like got him wrapped around her finger, but we, the viewer at that time, don't actually know that she's just making it up on the spot. That moment, and then when I think Eve 6 brings the two together, and they just both smile at each other, and you realize, oh, there's something going on here.
For my number 8, I have Joe Spano as Mike Millar in Titus Fugit and Max. He's a main character in that episode, but he's kind of, again, one of those sort of middle-of-the-road people that has a lot of the weight of the story on him, but isn't one of the dramatic characters. And he's just trying to figure out what's going on. He's kind of unpleasant to Mulder, especially Mulder, at the beginning of the episode, but then he sort of grudgingly comes to believe him based on the evidence that Mulder and Scully are putting together. And I like that he was just kind of skeptical, but he was a good guy, no nonsense, and he sort of becomes their ally, because I don't think that's something that we saw a lot of, for one thing. Somebody that still had that, maintain his position, but actually did go with the evidence and what they were telling him was going on, and changed his opinion and his investigation based on it. I just thought he did a really good job playing that character.
Yeah, you know what I like about his character? It's exactly what you said. Like, he's kind of unpleasant towards Mulder and Scully, especially Mulder, but sometimes in the X-Files, you'll have Mulder giving his theory, and then someone will be like, oh, that's insane. And, it's just like over the top, like histrionics that I don't believe this at all. But Mike Millar, he basically plays it like a normal person. He doesn't believe it, but he's not outright rude about it. He plays it, he underplays it. He just like, all right, we're here to solve this plane crash. We're going to do our thing. And he just sort of plays it nice and mellow. He comes off very real. And again, like you mentioned, he's like that everyman. type, like the guy from Darkness Falls. There's something about them that I do really enjoy the performances.
Does anybody have an honorable mention that you didn't have to use for one of your choices to fill in?
Bryan Cranston as Crump.
Okay.
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
He's great. I haven't seen the episode in years, but I memean, he's, again, a sympathetic character who is not a perfect character. He's kind of racist. He's kind of butting heads with Mulder really hard on, not normal things. And Bryan Cranston is awesome in everything. I mean, Breaking Bad is my second favorite show ever. He is great. And like the transition from being, sympathetic in the teaser because his wife is dying in front of him towards being unsympathetic because he's basically arguing the entire time with our protagonist, and then back to sympathetic. It's a great performance.
Yeah. Mine would be Lorena Gale, the actress Lorena Gale. She was in Shadows. She was Ellen Bledsoe. She's the one that says that it's like Arthur Graves is very dead, and there's just something in the delivery. I love it. And she's the nurse in One Breath that sort of like represents many nurses that are intolerant of Mulder. She's the attorney in Elegy that represents Harold Spuler. And then she's the pediatric neurologist consult that Scully speaks to, on the TV, and I Want to Believe. And she's always that same, at least on the X-Files. I haven't seen her in other things. I know she had done some other things, but she's always that same character type. But she just really makes it work. So she's kind of my honorable mention for adding characters like that to the show.
I love Mulder's reaction to her in Shadows when she says, Arthur Graves is very dead. It cuts to Mulder and Scully, and Mulder's got this, like, amused look that he's just like, okay, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
I think an honorable mention for me would be Nick Chinland, because Donnie Pfaster was another character, just, ordinary, appears as an ordinary guy, but underlying evil, creepy, just a great understated performance, especially in Irresistible. Orizin, however you pronounce that, goes a little over the top with it. Another episode that I enjoy, but I, fully understand its problems and issues. But I think his performance outstanding in both of those episodes.
Yeah, he's one of the few people that I'm sure he's different as a person. I haven't seen him in person, but there's a creep factor that extends beyond that performance.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read some of our responses from social media. I'm just going to go through some of them, but if you guys have anything that you really want to add, then just chime in. So start with Clara Cook, who says, I think we all know who I'm going to say. Michael Satonen as the plucky train conductor in 731. That may be her favorite character of the show. I'm not sure, but she's very fond of him, and understandably so. He's also in Deep Throat and Elegy, and I think in Sleepless as well. He's a good one. Paige Schechter says one that she has rarely mentioned is Heather McComb, who plays the troubled teen Shannon Osbury in To Hand of Verletzt. She has the incredibly emotional scene that requires her to completely break down over a false memory of being tortured and having babies that are killed.
That is an incredible performance, actually. It's like a 4-minute speech that she's basically doing, and I think she's a teenager, and that's the actress is a teenager there, and she played the hell out of that scene. It's so much raw emotion. It's so much dark material. That is great performance.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't think I thought about that for a while, but then it is a scene that goes on and it's compelling, yeah. But you're right. It's a long scene that she has to drive with that performance. Annie Flower says, I vote for Amanda Pays, who played Mulder's ex-girlfriend Phoebe in season 1's Fire. It's so easy to hate her, but if you've watched 90's Flash, she plays a very likable character. Says she's a cool look into Mulder's past, and I like that he dated someone so unlikable.
I do agree that it's very easy to hate her.
I agree, too. I think it's, yeah. But I like that somebody liked her. And in fact, Montgomery Scott was another person that mentioned, what about Phoebe Green? I liked her character and thought she contributed to the episode as well.
I like the character. I just wish she had more chemistry with David Duchovny. I just didn't see
it.
That
was, yeah.
She was a memorable part of a somewhat forgettable episode.
Yeah.
I find it a comical episode, but I do think that she was a memorable part of it, so I agree with that. Jocelyn Rojas says, Agent Mo Box in Irresistible, Bruce White's. And the character says, anything slightly freakazoid, that's the drill, call Mo Box. And I remarked that he's also the loudest typer in television because he's just on the computer and he's just banging away at that keyboard. But he did have personality. He was another one that was just a guy trying to do his job that got pulled into something, but he really was a good personality.
I'm realizing as we talk about this, I like all these little characters that just add like little nuance to their character.
Yeah.
the allies that Mulder and Scully get on their journey through these 11 seasons. They're just usually something about them I like.
Yes, me too. Me too. In Fight the Future, the chief of the firemen, whose actor's name is Gary Grubbs, Fire Captain Cools, that says, "What about my men?"
What about my men?
I would second him as well as the sheriff in our town.
Oh, yeah,
when Mulder's talking about dragging the lake and he says, "I'll do it." Talks about Foxfire being a legend about swamp gas. He does a good job with that character. Kurt North says, "I would answer, but I may be burned at the stake." So I'm going to assume
I bet I can hazard a guess
that he is speaking of one Diana Fowley. So this is for you, Raynard Muldrake. Diana Fowley is his selection. Joanne Corrigan says, "I choose Ansel Bray." And we actually have mentioned Ansel, the photographer in Quagmire, played by R. Nelson Brown, said that he represented a character that's always trying to get that elusive photograph. And she also mentions that Ansel Adams' mother's maiden name was Bray, so the character name must have come from that, which is kind of cool. Cortlan, Waters Bartley, mentions Lily Tomlin and Ed Asner from How the Ghost Stole Christmas.
Yeah,
no more stars. But were they not already stars? They would have been used as a bit character, not a bit character, but a character that came in for a one-time thing. So
another one I considered, but ultimately threw out, both because he had been a long-standing star and also appeared in several episodes as the same character, was Michael McKean. Because, Morris Fletcher is just an unlikable guy, but somehow you still root for him because Michael McKean is so dynamic. And I think Ed Asner and Lily Tomlin knocked it out of the park in their performance, but because they were so famous, I guess I skipped over them, but I agree it's that they were great.
Luke Winch mentions Stuart Charno, who played the puppet in Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, who said he had this look of complete bewilderment and mild amusement about everything that was happening to him, as though he knew what was going to happen, but delightfully surprised when it actually did. He made me giggle. He does do a good job in kind of a silly, quirky killer role. It's unusual, but I think that he pulled that off well. Maura Jaeger says Peter Boyle is toward the top of the list for me. So another Clyde Bruckman vote. Isabelle Dubois says that she would choose Roger Cross from Pusher and then also from Familiar.
He's also in Folia Deux, I think.
Okay. No.
I think. He's really good in everything, though.
Yeah. And he's another sort of understated, doing the job type of person that elevates that type of performance. And then she mentions Larry Musser. She mentions him as the sheriff, Sheriff Bonsan in Chingo. But he's also, of course, into Hand of Roulettes as a sheriff. And in Jose Chung's From Outer Space, it's detective. He's in Unrequited as well. So had 4 appearances from him. And then, of course, Alex Steichen. We love him in the Darren Morgan ones. So he was in all of them, I think, except for War of the Copperflages. And he would have made my list had he not been mentioned already on hers when I saw that. Because I think that he's great. He does those little parts that are strange and just adds to the episode, And I love that he was in the revival episodes as well, doing the same thing. Carl Sweeney says it's probably a niche one, but of season 1's assortment of experts, I like Christine Estabrook as Henderson, the handwriting analyst at Young at Heart. I thought she played off Mulder really well and wanted to see more of her. And I thought that was interesting because season 1 did have a lot of experts that they consulted that we didn't see quite so much after that. But I remember her and that banter they had back and forth.
Yeah, she says something to Mulder along the lines of, staring over my shoulder isn't going to get your results quicker. Yeah. So she goes toe to toe with Mulder, doesn't take any of his crap, which I thought was a great interchange. She's
basically hitting on him throughout the entire scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of, she says she's showing off too, so she's good at what she's doing. She was dynamic. Sarah Blair says, I always like Holly, played by Julia Arcos in Pusher. I'm sad she wasn't featured in more episodes. And
she was in Redux 1.
She was in Redux 1. She was in, so 2, I guess, but she wants to see her. Maybe she wants to see her in more episodes. She says, I ship her and Pendrell. That was her best comment. So Holly. This is perhaps, Mark O'Brien has maybe my favorite comment anyone's ever made about one of these questions. Says, my favorite all-time minor character was the hotel reception guy in Colony who forgets Mulder's message. His breezy-headedness changed the entire myth arc. So he's the guy that
his pencil broke,
calls,
right?
He smashes the pencil as he's trying to write the note, wonders aloud who the message is for, and then doesn't recognize Dana Scully when she walks in 2 seconds later.
Literally the most incompetent person at taking a message because he gets the message, breaks the pencil, decides to talk to himself.
Who is this for?
And then the light bursts into his face, and he's like, I can't see.
That's right, you mentioned that too.
Yeah, I forgot everything.
Yeah, but it's like you can just see that pencil going into the paper, and then he's like, who is this for? And then she walks in and wants a room, and he doesn't remember that the message was there. He's just blinded.
He's like, it's been a real tough day.
I mean, for an excellent Myth Arc episode, that is high hilarity right there. And I like Mark saying that it could have changed the course of the entire Myth Arc.
That is true, because Scully wouldn't have been exchanged for Samantha. Then would Mulder have found out that that's not really Samantha? It would have changed everything.
Yeah.
Damn motel clerk.
I know. If ever there were a breaking off place for someone to do an alternate version, that must be it. Had the pencil he not broken the pencil. Yeah. Or maybe he had to call out sick that day and someone else came in. But yeah, he was definitely an influential, a very under-recognized character. Andrew Blaker said, would Chuck Burks be considered recurring? Because he says his middle name is underrated. I assume his middle name is Andrew. I didn't know that. But anyway, he talks about Bill Dow playing Chuck Burks. And he's a small part of different episodes, but I also love him. He does a great job. He's
good. He's in War of the Coprophages or whatever.
Yeah.
He dies from straining too much on the toilet.
Too forcefully. Yep.
What a way to go.
He's the, not Curiosity Shop, the shop of vintage Americana owner in
Forehead
Sweat, that having that little drink and gets speared by a lawn dart. Pruitt Taylor Vance comes up from Inrua. He does an excellent job. He is Jerry Snowes in Inrua.
He's got that shifty-eyed thing. Does he do that in other things he's in, or is that just in that episode?
I think that he actually has that condition. In the stigmas.
Okay.
I'm not positive. I do remember seeing him on an episode of Chicago Hope before I watched The X-Files. I can't remember, though, if he had that. I mean, I don't know if they played it up for the episode, but I want to say that I've heard that he actually does have that condition.
Okay.
Paige Schechter, again, says that she wants to give props to Daniel Quinn as Lieutenant Jack Schaefer and Jose Chung's From Outer Space. He's the one who makes it all make sense. He's so simultaneously believable and funny in the diner scene. I'm always sad when Lieutenant Jack is taken away in the body bag. I like the I'm always sad part because it's happened many times in her life since that's one of her favorite episodes and she's seen it a lot. But that's her character that makes it make sense. So, and he does a good job in the diner scene.
That is interesting because that episode, usually when I'm watching it, I'm more just noticing the comedy, but it is a tragic ending, like for almost all the characters involved in it, especially him.
Katie Doe loves Scott Bellis as Max. She says he's not underappreciated necessarily, but she loves his performance.
He should have been in more episodes. I feel like he was so underutilized.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a really, I think, affable actor. And that's probably why they wanted to have him back as well. So that would have been fun to see more of him. And then Mark O'Brien again says we can't forget Albert Hosteen and the Hosteen family.
Yes, I hadn't considered that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he really, I mean, he seemed so prominent to me in the show, even though there are only, the 2 trilogies in which he plays part, but he is a guest actor and an excellent one.
He is really good, and he's there in my favorite Skinner scene ever when Skinner asks when Skinner tells Cigarette Smoking Man to pucker up and kiss his ass. He's right there by his side.
I think that there's some phrases in some of the, like the Anasazi, Blessing Way, Paperclip trilogy. There's some that I think work really well for the story, and then the others that might not had someone else voice them. I'm thinking of The Buzzard is a large but cowardly bird. I don't know why that strikes me as funny.
Of over-the-top dialogue in there. Yeah.
And I like his performance a lot. I feel like the writing didn't do him any justice by having him do these really long voiceovers in The Blessing Way. But like his character itself was very interesting and very well played. Could have toned down some of the dialogue.
I also enjoyed just the fact that they were paying respects, I suppose, to the Code Talkers and how important a role they played in World War II. So I think that was a really nice addition, and to not whitewash everything. And I believe his name was Floyd Red Crow Westerman.
That's right.
I believe. Yeah. And I think his performances, while there weren't many of them, were definitely memorable. So I agree wholeheartedly with that pick, even though for some reason I'd never even considered it.
Yeah, it's one of those that's not so far above the radar, but not under the radar either, I think. But he has a lot of dignity that he brought to that. Sarah Ford said that she again mentions Max Fennick and Duane Barry both give great emotional performances as adoptees. So again, Scott Bellis and then Steve Railsbeck. I love the contrast of how each man lets the trauma affect him. Max is sweet and gentle, but still obsessive about his experiences. Duane Barry's trauma and rage at not being taken seriously morphs into violence. And he did do a great job, I think, like with the, a character that's unhinged, but you sort of feel for him and not feel for him, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, he's the reason Scully gets abducted pretty much, but you still sympathize with him. In Ascension, when he's apologizing to Mulder, he really, really, really is not a bad guy. He just could not go again. He needed to find a way out.
Adam Silva mentions Tom Noonan in Paper Hearts.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
He's great. I didn't think of him because I think that we do think of him, even though he fits this category of people that are maybe have one role that's so affecting. And he's another one too, I think, like Pusher, that has that casual, calm. You might like him as a person, but he's actually, a bad person. One
thing both him and Robert Wisdom do that is great is like they're back and forth with David Duchovny. Those scenes are amazing. The way they play off each other is great.
And then another one Mark O'Brien mentioned was the Genie, which is Paula Sorge, I think it's how you say her name. And then the Stokes brothers from Just Sweat, Will Sasso and Kevin Weissman. And then Oliver from Sunshine Days, which was interesting. That's, the second to last episode of the whole series. Kurt North also mentioned Michael Emerson as Oliver in Sunshine Days, so the main character in that episode. And I confess, I don't particularly, it's not one that I would rewatch with regularity.
I haven't rewatched Sunshine Days since it aired. It's one that makes me irrationally angry.
I may have seen it one other time. But I do recall that he seems like he gave like a poignant performance from what I remember of his performance of the show. So that's worthwhile. I feel like we could just go on and on. There's so many of them once you get into the topics. Did you guys think of anything else that you wanted to add? I'm going to kind of stop with all of the feedback now because we've gotten a lot of the people's comments in.
It was great to get so much feedback in. I agree. Yeah, we could go on forever with so many episodes. Lends itself to just phenomenal performances by guest actors throughout the run. Not endless, but close topic of conversation and a fun one.
Oh yeah, it's great fun. Great fun.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like minor characters that I was thinking the wife in Deep Throat, Mrs. Budahas. She doesn't do much, but she's her family's basically been torn apart by this, and she plays it really well. I don't remember the actress's name, but she's great. I just watched that episode this morning, and then there's so many others.
I even like I watched Squeeze the other day. Oh gosh, I can't believe I can't remember his name. But the man in the teaser that's murdered, and he makes what's his name? But he makes the phone call to his wife about his running late, and the
presentation didn't
go so well. And he says, "I love you," and that's kind of the different, not the stock callous businessman that you see on various TV shows.
That's exactly what I was thinking as I watch that every time. It was like, they could have played this up like he's just a generic business guy, but no, he's got a presentation that didn't go well.
And he's calling his wife about it, and it gives him even that little bit of time in a very early episode. He's a person and character. So anyway, I'm sure we could keep thinking of him endlessly, but if anybody has any other thoughts that they want to contribute when the episode comes out, I'm sure we can have more discussions on it. So for now, where can we find you guys online?
I have a blog. It's called Lazy Stream of Thoughtlessness. It's a long name, but you can either Google it or go to www.lazystreamofthoughtlessness.com. It used to be sort of general purpose pop culture and other stuff that interests me, but it's become more and more X-Files centered because I realized that's what I like to write about. It doesn't have that much content on it, but you guys may have seen my polls on the Facebook page, and those originated because I started ranking the episodes myself, and I was like, I want to see what everyone else thinks. Head there and let me know what you think.
Okay, great. Michelle, how about you?
I am MMBaker13 on Twitter, and I make the joke all the time that I'm on Twitter, but I mostly lurk. I'm also trying to get better, so I've decided that I'm going to attempt a full X-Files rewatch and tweet about it. So I guess I'm counting on you guys to either hold me to that or get tired of hearing from me and tell me to just stop and go back to lurking. So I hope to at least increase my presence a little while. And if it's enjoyable, let me know. And if you want me to shut up, let me know that too.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be in the best possible way. So I look forward to your thoughts on your episode rewatch, series we watched. I am on Twitter, Marlene MHS, and Marlene Stemme on Facebook in the X-Files basement group, where we have lots of these sorts of discussions going on and would welcome any thoughts and contributions that everyone has. So we're going to wrap it up for now. Thanks everybody for listening, and remember, trust no one.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and hosted by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated team of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find the show on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, or inside our group, the X-Files Basement, an Xcast podcast fan group, plus on Instagram by typing in the XFcast. If you're a fan of the show, why not support us on Patreon? Exclusive bonus episodes, early access to new episodes, plus become part of our Xcast community in the Patreon department. To see our monthly subscription options, just head to patreon.com/the Xcast. That's patreon.com/the Xcast. We'd love to see you join our Patreon community. We're also part of the We Made This podcast network at We Made This Pod on Twitter and We Made This on Facebook. You can find a range of shows on TV, film, music and popular culture in general on the network. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.